Good evening and welcome back. Welcome to the August 8th, 2023 meeting of the Abington Board of School Directors. I note the attendance of all board members with the exception of Dr. Kleiman and Ms. Glasser, who are excused. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Abington Board of School Directors has convened this evening's meeting at the Administration Building, and the public is welcome. In consideration of the health and safety of the school community, this meeting is also being broadcast live on the Abington School District YouTube channel. This meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the district's website and cable channel no later than Friday, August 11, 2023, to allow those members of the public who cannot participate to review the proceeding at a later time. Comments from citizens will be conducted in person and by phone. Information regarding participating remotely and public comment will be displayed on the screen at the time of public comment, and the board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. The board met in an executive session immediately preceding this evening's meeting to discuss litigation. This is a place where we hold dignity in high regard. Your voices are welcome and respected in this space. Are there any comments from my fellow, any additional information to be brought up from my fellow board members this evening? Okay. Comments from the board?
Nothing, thank you.
As Shamika mentioned earlier, Ms. Brown, welcome back everyone, and let's have a good school year.
Mr. Kay?
Thank you for missing a Phillies game. Because that's all I'm thinking about.
That's all.
right
That'll change in just a moment.
now. Oh, I know.
Dr. Mowry?
I'd like to welcome everyone to our 2023-2024 season.
Mr. Muhammad?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Fazy?
I just want to welcome everyone back. Thank you.
Dr. Fetcher?
Do you want me to hold on my announcements?
Just wanted to say welcome back. I know teachers are still out. Use your time wisely, have fun, get that last speech in if you can, and thank you for all you do. Administrators, you're here 12 months a year, we appreciate you. 12 months, a year, we appreciate you. Dr. Fetcher, go ahead.
I want to welcome everyone back as well. While I do not wish to start our first meeting in the 2023-2024 school year with some sad news, I would like to begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence for one of our team members who passed away last month. Ms. Camille Rylick was a special education teacher at Abington Senior High School last school year and was an exceptional teacher and cherished member of our school community. She genuinely loved the opportunity to work with every student in her classroom and on her caseload, and I know she will be missed. Our thoughts remain with her loved ones during this difficult time. I ask that you please join me in remembering Ms. Rylick with a moment of silence. Thank you. A few announcements.
Yes,
Let me
please.
Continue. The public orientation for the Abington Middle School feasibility study will be held during a special meeting scheduled for August 29th at 7:00 p.m. in this room. As a status update on the climate initiatives that have been discussed at the last few board meetings, there are some kickoff events that are being planned for the new school year. We have booked a national speaker on bullying, Tom Thelen, who will present on September 14th. He will also do a parent presentation that evening in the senior high auditorium, and we'll make sure that all this information is communicated through our normal sources. And we have continued to develop our professional development for all of our staff with bullying prevention. And we have a new form that will be on each school's website for anyone to make a report regarding bullying. And then finally, the pledges for our staff, students, parents, and guardians to sign, and district-wide character development themes will be developed and rolled out at the start of the school year. Also tonight, as an update on our efforts for bullying prevention, you will see additional materials for adoption on the agenda with a focus on lessons on bullying prevention. So these are just some of the updates from over the past few meetings, some of our discussions, just to keep you updated and informed of progress and steps we are taking to address this very difficult situation and put as many resources as we can for bullying prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you again for keeping that as a regular practice. It's something that you said you were going to do, and this is just another example of you following through with that. So thank you for that. We can proceed with this evening's orientation.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. We are always seeking to improve our communication tools and to ensure that we are in the same space as our parents and in terms of where they receive communication the most. Over the past year, I've had some very detailed responses to questions in some of my meetings with parents. So some of our table talks, but also through our parent council, which is our lead group of parents that kind of represent each PTO or PTA in the schools. And basically talking about what is the best way to receive communication, where do people want to go, how to organize that type of communication. So as a result of some of these discussions, as well as a desire to increase the ease of which people can receive our communications, tonight you will see our new communications tool, website, and something called ThrillShare that will be out this school year. And I'm going to ask Ms. Ali Artur if you could run through generally what we expect to see. But ultimately, this is exciting as we always seek to have those communications improved, as well as timing of communications. And we have been working to see what are the fastest ways in emergencies and or situations like late buses, those types of things, how we can get out information as quick and easy as possible, not only from the district level, but at the building level as well. Ms. Artur.
Good evening, Dr. Fetcher, Mrs. Brown, and members of the Board of School Directors. As Dr. Fetcher mentioned, I'm going to give everyone a quick communications update as we head into the 2023-2024 school year. So as Dr. Fetcher mentioned, through recent parent-guardian feedback, we identified a need for a more easy-to-navigate website for our families and also a more streamlined way for families to receive communications. And being that it had been roughly 10 years or so since we had last done a major revision of the Abington School District website and our current app, ASD to Go, we decided that it would be an opportune time to explore redesigning our website, especially as technology has changed greatly over time in that 10 years time span. There's more usage of smartphones. People have also become more accustomed to digital tools through the pandemic, so now is a great time. Last school year, we engaged a company called Aptogee. They work with school districts nationwide to provide some of these communication tools. So we began discussions with them about redesigning a more mobile responsive website and a user-friendly mobile app. So Aptogee has a platform called ThrillShare, which we will be using on our back end to manage the content on our website, sync it with the app, and then that is also going to be the format through which we now send mass communications from the school district and our schools. And they've actually also they've already implemented this platform for our social media content, just as a means for us to send out a post across all of our channels with one click. And that social media usage has been occurring since about the spring. But again, that's something that's happening more on our back end, and families who are visiting our Facebook or our Instagram account wouldn't necessarily notice any difference there. One of the big changes for our website is we're getting a shortened URL. So rather than the www.abington.k12.pa.us, we'll be moving to abingtonsd.org. And we're going to be launching that this coming Monday, August 14th. At that time, our old URL will automatically redirect visitors, so families don't need to worry if they forget that we have a new URL. They'll still be taken to the new page. We have already, through a couple of communications, started telling everyone that this shortened URL was coming, but it's a good idea to have that bookmarked. And right now, I'm just going to take you through a brief preview of the site. This is still our development end until it launches on Monday fully. But I just wanted to give everyone a sense of what this new web page is going to look like. So you'll notice it's a more sleek design, a little more modern. We are retaining some of the quick link buttons that we currently have on our Abington School District website, so that there are certain tools that are still easy to access for families. You'll notice we have a news and live feed section here. These are two components that integrate with the app. So when we have a news story get posted or a new photo on social media, the app is going to aggregate that content into the homepage of the app for users. So we do hear from families that they're not on Facebook or they're not on Instagram. So this is another way for them to still get that positive content without having to have a presence on social media. And it's also another good way to amplify our existing messages. So we hear from families a lot that they get a lot of emails and they aren't always able to keep track of them sometimes. So principals can go onto the live feed or the news feed and post recent communications. So then that way, if a family does happen to miss it in their inbox, again, this app is going to aggregate all that information. It also will have some new calendar functions. So just in the way before that you could download calendar events by the district or schools, that function will still be available. And just scrolling back up to the menu, you'll see at the top there are several icons. So those are all functions of the app. So what you'll find is that these functions are some of our most commonly visited sections of our website. So looking at our data from our old website, calendars and cafeteria menus were two of our most visited sections, and understandably so. That's where you're going to go, routinely to check what's happening. Another thing we heard from parents was they felt that the staff directories were a little hard to navigate sometimes. You had to go to either a different grade page or a different department. So each of the district and then each of the schools will have a searchable staff directory. And again, that's all a function in the app. So you won't need to go to the website on your phone to get that information. You can just click through the app to get that. If you are using the website on your desktop or on your phone, again, the website will be mobile responsive, so it'll scale a little bit better to smartphones or tablets. And this just gives you a quick preview of what the menus will look like. You will see all of the pages are laid out. And I'll just take everybody to one page now. This is where we're going to be housing our board information moving forward as an example. So this is where families can find the agendas, summaries, and videos. And lastly, I'll just take you to one of our school websites. So you can see the menu has all the schools easily listed. You can click to the school you want. And all of the school websites will also maintain the same format. So no matter what school you're on, it's going to have the same look and feel, so it'll be more easy to navigate for families. And again, the news feed, live feed, those will all be functions for each school building specifically as well. So as I mentioned, the website is going to automatically redirect users starting on Monday, but one of the messages we really do want to communicate to families is the importance of downloading the app. So that's going to be available for Apple and Android devices, so you just go to the App or Google Play Store for that. When you download it, you can select your preferences. So If you have students at multiple schools, you can subscribe to multiple schools. We do encourage everyone to subscribe to the district as well, so that way they still get superintendent, board communications, things coming out of various departments at the administrative level. So that's key as well, to not just subscribe to your school. One new feature in addition is our push notification. Like a lot of apps that people download on their mobile, you can subscribe to push notifications if you'd like. So this way, if let's say a principal is sending out something that is a little more urgent or timely, they have the ability to send out a push notification. So if you're not using the app or you didn't think to open it, you will get a pop-up on your phone that might say, hey, don't forget Spirit Day is tomorrow. Click here for more information. And then it'll bring you to the app so that you can see some of the latest updates. I already went over most of the key app features, the feed, the calendar, the dining menus. Another good feature is our document section. So this is going to be a great hub for evergreen materials. So let's say a student handbook. Again, rather than having to go onto the website and find the student handbook and pull it up, you can open the document center, and that'll be a location where you can easily grab those materials. I also mentioned that we will be migrating to ThrillShare for our mass communication system. So at present, we were using School Messenger. We've already sent out a couple of communications this summer through ThrillShare, and that happened via email. So ThrillShare integrates with our Skyward system. Families don't need to do anything to update their contact information outside of what they normally would have done. And the emails will just be coming through their system rather than School Messenger. We haven't had any snow days this past year, so people might forget that we also send out voice calls and text messages for things that are a little bit more urgent or timely. So the only difference that actually families will notice is our previous system was an opt-in text messaging system. This one will be an opt-out, so every mobile number that's in Skyward will be subscribed to text messages, and I'll go through on the next slide how families can opt out of that should they choose. But again, the important thing is that they don't have to do anything different to continue getting our communications. There's also a new translation function that's offered through ThrillShare, which is great for our non-English speaking families. We can do email. We can also do text-to-speech. So when we do send out the voice calls, they can be in the family's preferred language. We might have some kinks to work out on that end as we start up school, because we do need to make sure that families have their preferred language logged in the correct data field in Skyward, but we'll be working through that as school resumes. And I do just want to reiterate that ThrillShare is for our mass communication, so you'll still be getting, families will still get emails from their child's teachers just like they normally would. Skyward will still be used at a classroom level. This is really for sending out large amounts of emails at one time so they move more quickly through the system. So this could be district communications, a school, one grade level, several grade levels. Transportation will also be using it, in the event of a bus delay. They can quickly send out, notification of a delay to many families at once. Next step. So as I mentioned, we're launching the website on Monday. We still will be making updates for the 2023-2024 school year as we gear up for back to school and all of the materials that come with that. And there will likely be some kinks that need to be worked out with the new website, whether it's a link redirecting. So we just ask everyone for their patience as we work through that. The app is available for download now. Not all the functions are live yet since it syncs with the website and it hasn't launched, but that can be downloaded at this time. I mentioned that we sent out an email through our mass communication system already this summer. Once we do the Skyward rollover, in which we transition and get all the new incoming and kindergarten families loaded into Skyward, we will be doing another test. So we'll let families know via email that we're going to be sending them a call and a text just to make sure the system works. At that time, anybody who wants to opt out of text messaging can by replying stop to the short code. If anyone's familiar with mass text messages that I'm sure they've been subscribed to in the past. It's the same sort of format. And then like we do every school year, we're really just encouraging families, go into Skyward, make sure you have your mobile number in there versus a landline. If you want text messages, make sure your email address is up to date. And the last piece of this is currently we won't be migrating our staff emails to the new URL yet. The new URL will work, so if a family doesn't realize we haven't switched and they do first name, last name at abingtonsd.org, those emails will still come to us, but we won't fully be rolling that over until later in the school year. So the email addresses will still be first name, last name, with unfortunately the long extension, but that will be something that we have coming in the future. So that's about it for now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you speak to the redesign of the website, how that will assist with more ADA functions for compliance for ADA?
Sure. So Aptigy's technology is ADA compliant. So there's things that have to go into that, such as the contrast of the colors on the website. So you'll notice there was a lot of white space with a darker text on top. That's part of the ADA functionality for people who might have visual impairments. All of the text is also reader friendly. So if you're using a screen reader to listen to the text instead of read it yourself, that's something that will be compatible. There are also alternative texts built into the images. So if I post a photo of Dr. Fetcher, it might say Dr. Fetcher reading to students as the alternative text. So a screen reader would pick that up and be able to describe that image as well. So those are some added bonuses of moving to this platform too.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from our fellow board members?
One of the slides had symbols at the top based on popularity, such as calendar and cafeteria.
Yes.
But despite its lack of popularity or what have you, would it be possible to add e-flyers up there?
So it's a little nuanced. So we have the e-flyers. The e-flyer system is actually something that we built in-house because we have a very good tech team. So that is not a function of the app, so that's why you don't see it in the icons at the top. But knowing that the e-flyer system is still commonly used, we do have it on all of the home pages as one of these button links. So when you click that, that'll take you to our e-flyer webpage, so that is still available. And the document center will be another good place. So if an event is happening at a school level and they want to post, a flyer for fundraising efforts or something like that, the document center is another option where that can happen. And then the e-flyer system is more for our third-party community organizations to be able to reach our families within our website. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments?
I think it looks great. I mean, I think it looks fantastic. What a great job you guys did.
As a parent, I am thrilled. I do have one question. The information from PTOs and PTAs, you mentioned some parents don't have access to social media, and I know they do a great job with having information sent through social media. Is there a way for them to have access, or do they push it through their administrative leads in the building?
So the PTOs will be able to push information out through their, whether it's the school principal, or if it's somebody in my office, if it's something through parent council, we'd be happy to do that. All of our PTOs do have, if they don't have a social media presence, they typically have a website. So we do also still have that linked on our website as well. So if they, they can also post things to their own channels that are accessible to our parents and guardians via the website.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? We're excited. Thank you so much. Great presentation. Dr. Fetcher, continue.
Okay. As we continue to be the recipients of ARP ESSER's funding, our plan for our health and safety plan is due for review. The last time it was reviewed was February 14th, 2023. My recommendation is to not revise the plan, and as it defaults to the CDC guidance. And I'm going to ask Dr. Rosenthal to please review that.
Yes, as is required for districts receiving funding under the American Rescue Plan and elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. We are required to review our health and safety plan every 6 months, as Dr. Fetcher just mentioned. So this review recommends no changes from the latest plan, and we follow all CDC recommendations in our plan.
Any questions?
Thank you so much. All right.
Or orientations?
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item number 3, which are comments from citizens. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comment is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. Or you may stand within the room. There are mics to the left and to the right of you. Please be sure to state your name and address. Thank you for your patience as we just give one more moment if anyone wants to call in. Mr. Sneed, can you confirm that there are no callers on the line?
That is confirmed.
Thank you, and no one within the room. We will move forward with agenda item number 5. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation to approve the June meeting minutes?
Yes, I can. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the minutes of the board meeting on June 13th, 2023, and the board meeting on June 27, 2023.
Second?
Thank you. We have a second. This is a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it and so moved. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the personnel addendum?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the changes in personnel as reflected in Personnel Addendum number 6.1.
Second?
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher?
All right, thank you, Ms. Brown. Tonight, our personnel addendum begins with item number 1 and the appointment of 13 professional employees. Ms. Kansasha Rogers is being recommended for the assistant principal position at Abington Middle School. I would ask Ms. Rogers to stand. She's present this evening. Ms. Rogers recently served as the assistant principal in the School District of Philadelphia, and prior to that as a special education advisor for the School District of Philadelphia. Ms. Rogers obtained her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Education from Temple University, Master of Science in Special and Elementary Education from St. Joseph's University, and School Principal Certification from Eastern University. The personnel addendum includes the recommendation for an increase in guidance counselors for each elementary school to have 1. I would like to comment that this has been an ongoing goal of administration and the board over the past few years, and it has been rolled out in a fiscally responsible way to ensure that all elementary schools will have at least 1 counselor associated with the elementary school. So this is a long-standing desire, I know, for the administration, but also I know many of the board members who are seated here have expressed that as a desire as well over the past few years. So very happy to make this recommendation. Item number 2 is the changes of assignment for 3 professional employees. Under item number 3 is a change of status for 18 professional employees. And Dr. Christopher Brown is being recommended for change of status to Director of Equity and Student Services. Dr. Brown will be part of the Student Services Department, working with student programs, research, and concerns when they arise. There are particular areas within student services, such as homeless and foster youth, programs for economically disadvantaged students, and review of requests for evaluation and reevaluation that will be placed under Dr. Brown's direction, as well as, of course, his continued work with equity within the district and the many things that he has done to date as well. Mr. Matthew Sneed, who's here as well this evening, is being recommended for the change of status to temporary director of technology. With the director of innovation leaving, we will continue to evaluate open positions in the structure of the department over this time period. Next, Ms. Kimberly Stokes is being recommended for the principal position at Copper Beach Elementary School. Ms. Stokes most recently served as the temporary assistant principal at Copper Beach Elementary School. Previously, she was the elementary curriculum specialist at Copper Beach and Rydell Elementary Schools. I'd like to particularly take the time to thank some of our community members, as well as Ms. Brown, who participated in the interview process and dedicated their time for that. So this is, exciting, and I strongly recommend Ms. Stokes for this position, as being able to witness what she has accomplished over the past few years in order to step into this role. And I know that the Copper Beach community will be excited for this as well. Under item number 5 is a request for leaves of absence for 4 professional employees. I bring your attention to item number 7 and item number 18, and the retirements of Ms. Kathy Walton, a reading teacher at Highland Elementary School, who has served the district for 13 years, Ms. Sylvia Otto, the administrative assistant in the receiving department, who has served the district for 34 years. The personnel addendum continues with acceptance of donated days for an employee, compensation for curriculum development, parent meetings, induction programs, IEP meetings, and support personnel items. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I would just like to say welcome Ms. Rogers to the district. We are excited about the work you are going to do. Much congratulations to Ms. Stokes. We are very excited. Me personally, I'm very excited for your leadership, your continued leadership at Copper Beach. And congratulations to Mr. Sneed for taking on additional responsibility in an area that you are already an expert in. We appreciate all you do. And if I didn't call your name out, it's not because it's not special, but these are people that I see on a regular basis, and I always want to welcome Ms. Rogers to the district. And congratulations to our retirees. Thank you for your service. Do what you like, when you like, how you like, from now on out. Dr. Fetcher, finished with that?
Yeah, I am. Strongly recommend all these individuals.
Yes, and we'll go to a vote.
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Fraser?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for permits for the use of buildings and grounds?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the applications for permits for use of buildings and grounds as reflected in Addendum number 7.1. All permits are subject to change per the provisions of the health safety plan pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Before I second, I just want to honor that Mr. Allen wanted to clap, so we will clap. Excellent. I'll take that second now.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The permit addendum reflects typical requests for buildings and grounds for meetings and other school events and activities for this time of year, including district athletics, choral, band, and instrument activities. Also, please note the various permits that have been submitted for open houses. I bring your attention to permit number 10, which is for a flu and COVID-19 vaccine clinic being held at Abington Senior High School on October 6, 2023. Permit number 18 for the class of 2024 commencement, which will be held on June 5th, 2024, with rain dates for June 6th and 10th. With the graduations announcement, we are trying to make an effort to announce a graduation date as soon as possible so that families have ample time to make plans. And we have increased this timing of this over the past couple of years, and I feel that it's a good way to start the school year with the end in mind for our seniors especially, but also for their families, knowing how we can plan to celebrate them at the end of a successful school year.
Very exciting stuff. Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for the first reading of the Student Offenses and Discipline Procedures Policy?
Yes. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the board policy entitled Student Offenses and Discipline Procedures Policy as reflected in Addendum number 8.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The policy regarding student offenses and disciplinary procedures is being presented for a first reading again this evening. The recommended revisions follows reviews by the Principals Council and other building level administrators in order to address the feedback that we received from the Board of School Directors at the last meeting. And I'm going to ask that Dr. Brown, if you could please review the changes in this new first reading.
Thanks, Dr. Fetcher. Different in this version of the draft than before was, excuse me, if you can scroll down, there is some language specifically right in the first two highlighted paragraphs there that addresses really the positive school climate and emphasis on positive school climate in all of our schools. In the second paragraph, beginning with students who do not follow the rules, there's a more expanded version of some of the more natural consequences that will occur inside the classroom level. And there was a specific emphasis at the last meeting about recess, and as noted here in the district's wellness assessment, physical activity is not utilized as a punishment, nor is taking opportunities away for physical activity, such as recess, utilized as a punishment. We clarified the language in this paragraph based on the feedback that was received before, but also we wanted to provide a little bit further clarification as to kind of what that looks like in execution. So, for example, after further discussion with the elementary school principals with the topic of recess, one of the examples that came up was if there was an altercation between two students who were playing basketball at recess, time may be used to resolve the conflict, and potentially maybe even the activity of basketball may be taken away, but they would still have an opportunity to have recess and the physical activity. So using the time to provide conflict resolution or restoration of some format during that time. And the same would occur, for example, if there was a conflict in a classroom or a conflict in the cafeteria. There may be a brief moment where, students, and we use the cafeteria example, might be the conflict may be resolved, they would still be provided an opportunity to eat. It's not like they would lose the opportunity to eat because their conflict was resolved in the moment. So, just further clarification on that, as well as the rest of the policy here, which, as we talked about at our last meeting, was designed really with the intention of providing more opportunities for our building principals to have restorative measures and options other than suspensions and exclusions from school in the resolution of some of the behaviors that occur inside our schools. So that's listed out, and we've reviewed that before, but you can see list of offenses that were previously defined as eligible for suspension, and they still can be. However, through the revision of the policy, there's greater emphasis and greater opportunity for and more encouragement for school leaders to utilize some of these alternative measures to resolve some of those infractions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Just like to comment my appreciation for the policy rewritten in a more positive mindset. And I know that there was anecdotal feedback that there was never something punitive in terms of loss of recess, that it was restorative. But this policy now, in my opinion, aligns to what was shared from the administrators. So, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Are there any outliers that would prevent recess, such as an example where a kid would threaten a teacher right before recess due to some incident that might take place in the classroom? How would that be addressed?
More often in a situation like that, if there is a conflict that would occur of that magnitude just before, there may perhaps be an investigation that would occur that might delay or perhaps cause some form of change. I mean, those are pretty specific and time-sensitive things that might require, I think that would require that in that circumstance. So I can't forecast for you how long that would take, and maybe perhaps it might take the full recess. But I think the safety concerns would take priority in that circumstance.
Any additional questions or comments? I echo what Mr. Allen said. I thank you for going back, regrouping, and making sure there's intentionality upon what's written within the policy and that it aligns with our values. So thank you. Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for the second reading of the bullying and harassment policy?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the second reading of the board policy entitled Bullying, Cyberbullying, and Unlawful Harassment Policy as reflected in Addendum number 9.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Tonight, the school board policy on bullying, cyberbullying, and unlawful harassment has been updated from our last board meeting from the first reading to include the recommendation to incorporate an easier access to definitions of bullying, cyberbullying, and unlawful harassment into the policy. So there is, as you could see, the hyperlink there, which brings that to the page of definitions. Some of the concern at the last board meeting was what is the ease of access for especially parents to be able to have access to this definition. So that is the solution that we propose. Dr. Rosenthal, I don't know if you want to expand on any of that or if I covered what you were going to say.
No, that's exactly right. We added the hyperlink. The rest of the changes are the same from the first time that we presented this.
Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the Special Education Services Agreement?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to contract with Children's Therapy Center for the provision of occupational therapy and physical therapy for the 2023-2024 school year in an amount not to exceed $450,000.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. This item is for contracted services for our special education program. Ms. Capitola is here this evening to answer any questions that you may have about any of these services.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the OT and PT Services Agreement? I'm sorry, did I?
I just read that. 10.2?
Oh, we included 10.2 as well?
Right, so we're on 10.1.
We accidentally switched the two, so 10.1.
So
Oh,
we need to do
10.1.
10.1.
Oh, okay.
Need to do that.
Thank you for the clarification. I apologize for the
it.
confusion.
All right. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to contract with Pediatric Therapeutic Services for the provision of applied behavior analysts services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech and language services for the district special education program for the 2023-2024 school year for up to $720,000 for ABA, OT, PT, and speech and language services, including during ESY if needed.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Once again, this is for contracted services for our special education program, and Ms. Capitola is here to answer any questions you may have about these particular services.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Is all of this funding, does this come through IDEA funds, or is this like generally funded?
The services are split funded, so most of the OT and PT, because they're required services by our district, are coming from our state and local funds to our general fund. But the behavioral specialists and the registered behavior technicians, I am able to fund through IDEA.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kai?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the Age of Beginner Services Agreement?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves payments to the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for Age of Beginner students for the 2023-2024 school year for costs associated with early intervention services in an amount not to exceed $120,000.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This item is for, to contract with the MCIU for our early intervention services for our students.
Questions or comments from the board?
Can I just ask, is that an increase or decrease from the previous years?
Just trying to see if I have that.
It's the same.
It is the same?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kai?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for the Access Program Agreement?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to enter into an agreement with the Civic Solution Group for the processing of school-based access program claims for reimbursement in the amount of 29 cents per claim for direct services and 16 cents per claim for transportation services that are provided to eligible students who participate in the district's special education program for the period of July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This item is for the annual agreement for processing school-based access program reimbursement claims for the district so that we can receive reimbursement when a student receives these services.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kai?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for the 2023-2024 Instructional Materials Adoption?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors, in accordance with sections 508 and 803 of the Pennsylvania School Code, adopts new textbooks and/or instructional programs for the subjects and courses and levels reflected in Addendum number 12.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. We are requesting adoption of these instructional materials. I'm going to ask Ms. Capitola and Dr. Rosenthal to review the materials set for adoption this evening.
Yes, we're asking the board to allow us to adopt the Essential for Living program, which is a verbal behavior program that we want to utilize with our middle school level autistic support students. It's a continuation of the Competent Learner Model. These students have been in Competent Learner Model for 6 years now, and need to move on to more age-appropriate transition skills and verbal operants through Essential for Living. It was recommended by the MCIU Program Coordinator for Professional Development for Autistic Students, and we've had several meetings this year to look at the feasibility of implementing, and it's a good time of year. Both of our CLM teachers at the middle school will be new teachers this year, and we'll be able to provide them with intensive training at the beginning of the school year.
And I can take it from here for the bullying prevention and positive behavior supports. Those are a direct result of the Superintendent's Committee on Bully Prevention that met all last year. And after a review and looking at what is evidence-based by the National Center on Safe, Supportive Learning Environments, we selected the bully prevention and PBS because our district already utilizes positive behavior interventions and supports, and this program fits in nicely with the model that we already utilize. And then the Stop and Think Social Skills program is also an evidence-based social emotional learning program that our new elementary counselors in all the buildings will be able to utilize in effectively teaching social emotional learning with our kids in 4th and 5th grade.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
The only question I have is I noticed that some of them have years that make them seem older. Are there updates, or how do we make sure that they're up to date for us?
So in terms of the dates of publish, these are the most recent publications under
Yeah.
those particular titles, correct?
Yeah, these are the most update. A number of the social emotional learning, we would get any new additions that are received, but right now these are the ones that are listed under the evidence-based programs that we thought would best align with what we do.
So if they have updates, they alert you to them automatically, or do you have to update them?
We would have to update them, but we take a look at what's evidence-based in SEL, and we look at what also is recommended by the county for SEL continually every year. We meet with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? In regard to it being curriculum, can you give a brief overview of how it would be rolled out? What would it look like? Is it morning meeting time? Is it after lunch? What does it look like?
So the bullying, there's several things. The bullying prevention is, we already use Second Step as an overall social emotional learning at the elementary, actually K to 8 right now. And there are bullying lessons in that. But through the work of our committee, we decided that we want something else that's more specific just for bullying, and that's why this was selected. These are 3 or 4, depending on the grade level, specific lessons that the lesson plans are in there for teachers to review and utilize, and they'll be rolled out in September, right when school starts. We thought that aligned with all of the other initiatives that Dr. Fencher mentioned before for climate, that this would fit in perfectly with that, as we're also looking at character ed themes and kickoff events going on in September, all centered around bullying prevention.
Are there notes to families to let the families know what the students are learning about so that they can be a part of this as well?
Absolutely. There will be communication to families when this is rolled out. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Yeah, actually, I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any built-in tools to measure perhaps a pre-test and a post-test just to determine students' growth?
There is not a pre-test or a post-test with this. There is for Second Step, because that's something that that we need to do with the county. But we also really, what we look at is our climate surveys that specifically have items measuring bullying. So we'll be looking at its effectiveness by looking at comparing to last year when we didn't use this compared to this year.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay? Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for district-wide assessments?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the district-wide assessment program, thereby providing representational consent for this method of collecting information about students with the stipulation that parents, guardians be provided written notification of the name and purpose of each assessment to be administered as attached in Addendum number 3.1.
Second?
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This is a request that the Board of School Directors, as Dr. Mowry expressed in the motion, to provide representational consent to administer the assessments that are reflected in the addendum. Parents and guardians will be advised in advance that these assessments are to be administered throughout the school year and to which grade levels, as well as the purpose.
Thank you. Mr. Sneed, were you trying to get that up, or can we?
While that's opening, just a general question. This looks like a lot of assessments to someone that might not know what everything is or stands for. About approximately how many days or how much time is used for assessment of students for these standardized type assessments? Is that, if you don't have that number, because
I don't have the number, but maybe Dr. Butts has a better handle on the approximate number of days that these assessments take from our students.
So looking at the assessment, you should see some dates. Those are the dates on which we're projecting the administration of the tests. The amount of time that a student would take on these tests sometimes are variable because we do give them in certain situations as untimed tests. Relatively speaking, or as much time as they need, even though we do have a beginning time for the test. So for example, Keystone and PSSA tests, students will be able to take as much time as they need to complete the test. So it's usually a variable of times, but you'll see on the dates there at least the frequency of when we would be administering the tests. I believe your question is how many days over.
Better than a very specific, is that a factor when you're planning this calendar of is the amount
Yes.
of assessment? Okay.
Yes, we try to be as cognizant as possible of time of tests, the amount of time that a test would take. So for example, things like curriculum-based assessments. The standard-based assessments that are administered by the state are kind of out of our local control.
Totally, I understand.
But we do try to be aware of how we test and how frequent we test.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the board? And these testing windows, they are given to us by the state. It's not something that we come up with, but we can select which day we want to use within that testing window, correct?
Correct. And the number of tests that would be given on a specific day. So we are allowed to have more than one test. We traditionally tend not to, for our students' sakes.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Mr. Sneed? We are good. Thank you. Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Mowry, can you please read the recommendation for the confidential student matters?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the confidential student matters as reflected in Addendum number 14.1, sorry.
Second?
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Keeping in mind the confidentiality of student matters, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Young?
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Mr. Kay?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Dr. Fetcher, any other reports for this evening?
I provide the conference attendance and professional leaves and the capital improvement projects report for your information.
Thank you. Any business to be appropriately brought up by my fellow board members? That takes us to comments from citizens. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comments is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. Or you may use the mics within the room. Please remember to state your name and address. Mr. Sneed, can you confirm that there are no callers on the line?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. We will have closing comments from my fellow board members. Mr. Allen?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. We keep going.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, thank you.
Dr. Fetcher?
I'm just excited to be back and
Really?
at our board meeting. So,
Yes.
Opposite day.
specifically the board meeting. So thank you for this opportunity.
A great time to be had. Thank you all. Have a good night. This meeting is adjourned.